Welcome to the Winning Edge podcast, where we share focus, fueling, and faith-filled stories and strategies to give young athletes the tools they need to become the best version of themselves as athletes and individuals.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you. We are your hosts. I'm Lindsay, former collegiate athlete, coach, educator, and educational coach for over 20 years, and a mom of two young athletes.
And I'm Stacy, registered dietitian nutritionist of over 18 years and a mom of two young athletes. Today, we're tackling one of the toughest balancing acts in sports, the role of parents. Every coach, athlete, and family faces it. How much support is too much? When does encouragement become pressure? And where do we draw the line between being involved and being overly involved? I'm really thankful that today we're having that conversation with a coach and father who can share his perspective on the topic from many years of experience. Today, we'll explore the struggles and realities parents face while trying to do what they believe is best for their young athletes. Through honest discussion, we'll unpack what healthy support really looks like and how everyone in the athletic triangle, parent, coach, and athlete, can work together for growth, character development, and success, both on and off the field. But before we jump in, I wanted to introduce our guest, Kristynik. Kurt is the founder and director of the Rake City Cypress Baseball Organization. He was born and raised in Cypress, Texas, and he has been involved in baseball and athletics his entire life. Kurt graduated from Cy Falls High School, where he was a 2-year letterman in football and a 3-year letterman and captain in baseball. He was part of the first Cy Falls baseball team to make the playoffs in school history in 1996 during his senior year. Upon conclusion of his high school career, he committed to play baseball at Texas Tech University. After spending the 1997 season as a member of the Big 12 champion Red Raiders, he transferred across town to Lubbock Christian University. While at LCU, he was part of 2 Sooner Athletic Conference championship teams, including his senior year in 2000, where he was the winning pitcher in the conference tournament championship game. After graduation, Kurt made his way back to Lubbock to join the Texas Tech coaching staff for the 2001 season. After graduating with his master's degree from Texas Tech University, he returned to Cypress and began working on his family's flooring business. He was a sales and project manager for 13 years before leaving the company for 1 year to go back to coaching full-time. He took over as the general manager and head coach of the Texas Slam Baseball Academy in Livingston, Texas in early 2014. In the summer of 2015, he and his family returned to Cypress, following the company's merger in 2019, he was named company president, where he currently oversees all operations and business development. Over the past 26 years, Coach Kurt has coached over 150 players who have gone on to play at the collegiate level. He's coached high school summer varsity baseball at his alma mater at Cy Falls. He's coached at Lubbock Monterey and Cypress Ranch, where he was part of 2 state championship teams. He's also coached in the Houston Warriors, Texas Slam, and KD12 organizations prior to starting Rake City in Cypress. In 2019, Kurt had his first former player reach the major league level when Cy Ranch and Texas Slam alum Corbin Martin debuted for the Houston Astros. He has since led many more former players to reach the major leagues. Coach Kurt and his wife are residents of Cypress, Texas, and in their spare time, they enjoy spending it with family and friends and being continually involved in all things youth sports. Kurt, it's wonderful to have you with us and excited to garner your wisdom today. This morning, we're talking about really the role of the coach and parent relationship and supporting the whole athlete. And I love your background for this discussion. It's really interesting to kind of get your perspective on what that looks like as both a coach and a parent, and sort of where's the healthy space for us to live.
I think that's it's probably an endless question or that has an endless answer. I think that actually is kind of a moving target for every family because everybody's got, a different level of talent and personality with their kids. There is some aspects of doing this as cookie cutter, but there's a lot of it that has to be just as it applies to your own kid and and how how you see them and how you are with being honest with them about how they are as people, and then athletes second.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, one of the reasons why Lindsay and I started SPAN is because not every kid's gonna go play in college. Not every kid's gonna go play on beyond that, but sports were meant to be something so much larger than just that goal. And it feels oftentimes like as parents, we've lost sight of that and we're missing the opportunity to really grow great humans through sport. Talk to us a little bit about some of the most meaningful ways as parents they can kind of take their blinders off to just focusing on college and really think about supporting their child, supporting their athlete as a whole person.
I think the biggest thing that I say above everything else in reality when it comes to understanding how to best help your own kid is make sure you're a fan of the entire team that your kids are playing on from the get go. And when our so my son's a sophomore in college now, and when he was coming up playing, you play on different teams, baseball, football, basketball, whatever he did. And I credit my wife with this a bunch because she did not play athletics when she was growing up. And but what she did from the get-go, from the very first time we had my son in T-ball, was she rooted for every child that was out there, and made it a point that even for the situations where maybe one kid didn't have a parent that was there that day, or maybe that one was being a little bit harsher on their kid, which we know can happen, she cheered for them all. And I think that's always a good foundation that internally, and that's a decision. That's an internal decision for yourself to go out there and be a fan of the entire team. Obviously, hug on your own more than the rest, but you've got to be concentrating on doing the best for the entire team from that aspect. And then your child becomes somebody that I believe is a good teammate at that point, where they look around and know that you as a parent are supporting the entire team, and they go, okay, I need to be somebody that supports every one of my teammates that's on this bench or on this field. And that was something that I think was something prevalent in our house. There was never a question where my wife was during any of our kids' games. We'll just say that. It was very much noted that she was going to be the loudest one out there. But I do think, and there's still ones that come up to her today that say, hey, we always know where Miss Marty was, but they all knew, but they all appreciated. And I think that gives those kids that may have a parent that's a little bit tough on them, at least somebody else that's in their corner there, every single game.
We all need encouragers in our lives. And so I love that your
Yes.
wife did that. I think also the bigger takeaway is we talk a lot about this, but being a great teammate. And it's something that helps in sports, but also realistically working in the corporate world every single day, the way we get work done is through teams. And if you can't be a great team player, you're not only not going to be successful on the field, you're not going to be successful in life because we can't do it all by ourselves.
No. I think the deal, like, so with our company, we had our 60th anniversary celebration last night, and I made a direct comment when I was speaking of how, the gentlemen do our installations for our floors for our company are kind of like, very similar to how I handle our players in a lot of regards, in that, I expect a lot out of them. I'm tough on them in some cases, but I'm going to definitely give them praise, any opportunity that we get. And their reaction is what homeowners that's had our guys work in your house to have an appreciation for what they do, and that's their victories. And so I've always kind of correlated those together, and it's always made sense how to use what I do every day in the real world to go do the stuff on the baseball and coaching world.
Okay, so I have to ask you another question. When you think about parents and having been a parent of it, tell me, what do you think the common mistakes or sort of misconceptions are that parents make, and they're trying to be helpful, but maybe they might be missing the forest for the trees?
I'll tell you the very biggest mistake that's made, and even though it's something that I've always addressed, and I know other coaches that have addressed this, the worst thing that's out there, and I don't think it's ever going to change, but I just challenge parents to get better, is cheer for your kids, number one, but understand the dividing line, because they don't need your coaching during games, period. They do
You
not.
hit on my next question, Kurt, which is where's the line that
Okay.
parents cross on balancing
That
encouragement and trying to coach?
That is, and so, hey, good job with your team or whatever, or just cheering is one thing. Our biggest issue is this: when an athlete's in a performance spot, which we're going to take baseball. So we're at the plate, we're about to hit, or the pitcher's about to deliver a pitch, and it even could be your third baseman that's getting ready. The last thing that they need to hear in those situations is any kind of mechanical coaching in any form or fashion. The brain works in so many magical ways but it can also be to your detriment when you hear that one little thing that comes in about how your mechanics should work in that moment. And when you hear that, it slows you down. And if you are a fraction of a split second slower, you're beat. Whether that means a fastball getting past you, or you make a change in your mechanics for whatever, because you hear that at the last minute as a pitcher. And that is number one above everything else. That is the worst thing that can go. Now, that's parents, but coaches in some scenarios, we've done that too. And I've made it a point. I'm not saying I'm perfect on this, but if I'm coaching third base and we've got hitters up there, I do everything in my power to only encourage and never talk about their mechanics, never talk about something physical from that standpoint that could slow their brain down and make them change their focus in any slight bit. So parents, yes, cheer, absolutely. Hey, let's go, Johnny. We need to hit, but we don't need to say, "Hey, get your back foot down and get your, left foot here and your right arm." We don't need that. And the parents don't understand in most cases, and this is not a knock on parents, but a lot of parents haven't played at a, even a medium level, much less a higher level or whatever. But I can tell you that in when I was playing in high school and college, um, I never heard my dad ever say a word mechanically about anything. Now he played as well, so that does help. He understood that, but a lot of these people think that they're trying to be encouraging, but man, they're not. They're being so detrimental. And it's so bad because any child will hear their parent's voice over anybody else's in any scenario, and that slows them down. So
I
that is
love that
my every
wisdom.
year soapbox speech also, to be honest with you.
My favorite one, it kind of gets to me, and I always, especially because, Lindsay and I do both nutrition coaching and then also mindset coaching. So I love a lot of what you're saying. And I think it's really interesting because I'll watch parents while their kids on the pitching mound and they're like, throw strikes, do
Yeah.
this, do that. And I'm like, now is not the time.
Well, and that's the funniest thing. And look, we've all been guilty of it, but we're sitting in the stands. You got a parent going, "Throw strikes." Well, hey, you know what? I'm pretty much trying to throw strikes right now. I don't know what you may think I'm trying to do. I'm not really trying to throw it off the backstop. I'm trying to throw strikes, but and I've seen the flip side of this too, where I've had a couple situations over the years where the parent was doing so much coaching that it pushed the child to a breaking point and lashing back out during a game. Now that throws us completely off. And, I've had it happen twice with a hitter in the on deck circle listening to dad. And I had it once with a kid coming off the mound after pitching and finally turned around and was like, "Do you think I'm trying to throw balls? That's not what I'm trying to do out here." And so you have to be careful with that. And I think parents think they can just, they think they're being productive. They're just not. We know that.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to, and Lindsay and I have talked about this before, the intentions, where their heart posture is they think they're challenging or they think they're being encouraging. And I think sometimes it's just the lack of awareness and understanding of the impact their words have at that moment, or the way that they're delivering those words have in sort of all the other things already jumbled around in that athlete's head. And it's so funny because I also think the kids are so different. And I've talked about this. Our oldest is a lot like my husband. He doesn't want you to say anything. And so if we go to his games, we're like quiet, not even encouraging. He's just like, I just need
Yeah,
to do my thing and I need
I
it
can
to be
see that.
mine. And our younger one, he's so funny because he's like, if you're not cheering for me, I don't know if you're in the stands. And so
Yeah,
I think it's also important for parents to know your athlete and know like the ones who really don't want you to say even anything encouraging when they're up to bat.
that's
And
the
then the ones,
biggest. I mean, look at with y'all, what you're saying with your house is very similar to how ours was. And we had, my son's in college now, but when he was playing at Cy Ranch, he played football and baseball, and he didn't play a whole lot. He phenomenal teammate, smart kid. I coached your son in summer ball for a year,
yeah,
and
that's right.
he understands where his role was. But he also, when he got his opportunities, my wife was going to cheer like crazy, and he was good with that. My daughter played volleyball for a long time until a couple years ago, and she was more like me, where she probably didn't really want to hear a lot of that stuff, although she didn't get a choice with our family. But their personalities couldn't be any different from the way they approach that type of deal, and that's within one household, just like what you're saying. And I think as parents, we have to acknowledge that. For us, we have a son and daughter, so that's already we got a difference from there. But their mindsets were different. My son's is way more like my wife's, and my daughter's was way more like mine. And you just have to recognize that up front. And I think some parents, not on purpose, but they probably put, when they have multiple kids, they're going to put them all in the same blender, and there's just no way. there's no way to operate that way because one can take, like you said, for y'all's house, Luke, wants y'all to just sit there and sit on your hands and then, then you get to go and let it loose when the other one's playing. So I
But
get
that's
that.
also so much of their personality, right?
Yeah.
He's a very quiet kid. He's like
Yeah.
and it's funny because I joke with my husband, I'm like, catching couldn't have been a better position for him because he's just like,
Got to
I
lock you
don't
in.
need anyone to shine a light on me. I just need to be back, supporting everybody, doing
It's,
what I'm supposed to do.
yeah.
And then the other one, he's like, no, I'm gonna be a pitcher because I need everybody to look at me and I need all the pressure.
Understood.
So it
And
cracks
both
me
of
up.
them are right. That's the deal. Both of them are right for that. There's nothing wrong with either one. But the only time there's an issue is when the parent doesn't understand why each one of them is operating the way they're operating. That's now for us as coaches, it's the same thing. If we go look at a whole team and we get a kid like Luke and I'm trying to tell him, hey, I need you to be, vocal and all this kind of stuff, that means he's coming out of his own comfort zone to a spot that's going to affect his performance just physically on the field. And so you have guys that you push those buttons for and guys that you don't. And that's it's learning the kids over time. It takes a little
Yeah,
bit.
and he definitely needs coaches, so that transitions me really nicely into the coach's job, and so, again, that's like a piece that, my husband and I say our job is to be there to encourage, to support. The coach's job is to challenge the players. So talk about the expectation or what you wish parents knew more about coaching and yeah, I guess maybe start there. What are the things you really wish parents understood about being a coach?
I think the biggest part is what happens before they get to the field. The preparation aspect, it would be really cool to just show up to the game and have the lineup card already written for you and just boom, we get the coach. It's just not how it works. And good coaches appreciate that preparation. I always have because thinking through the strategy, thinking through the way that you would maneuver players in a game, how you would use your substitutions, how you'd use your relief pitchers, how you'd use different spots of the game to bunt or do whatever. All that's being taken into account. That's a lot of time that I think parents just don't see, and that's outside of these high school coaches. What are they dealing with? They're ordering uniforms, they're scheduling, which I don't think parents understand how big of a complete just grind it is to work on a schedule for a year. The logistics of everything, the aspects of travel with your buses, your food for the kids, your stops, all those different kind of things. Not to mention they got to go to the bus barn, get the bus, come back, and then do that after every single game. Like there's a lot of those things. They'd all just like to show up and just have the lineup card and walk out there. But I think the more that parents understood what that preparation was to physically just get onto the field for a game would probably cool them off a little bit from jumping all over that coach if he made a decision they didn't agree with per se, and it's a wider perspective of what those guys have to do.
And I think too, Kurt, you hit on something, and we've talked about this before, but people don't become coaches because they want to, break kiddos down. People become coaches because they have hearts for building up others. And so I think it's hard sometimes that when you're so focused on just your own kiddo, you don't realize that that coach is out there with the responsibility for every single kid on that team. And not only do they have a lot of other things they're responsible for, getting the bus, coordinating the schedule, probably also teaching a class, but their job is to figure out the puzzle pieces and how they fit best for the team,
Yeah. Well,
not just for your athlete.
think about in your house during baseball season, and since Luke's at high school level, you're in this spot. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm not talking while he's physically asleep at your house, but who sees him more on a daily basis? Those coaches at Cy Ranch or you? And it's the
Yeah, for
coaches,
sure.
and that's where you have to understand there's not what you just said is very true. There's no coach that got into any of this stuff with the intention of going out there and being after some kid or being out to get them. I know I hear parents say that from time to time. Well, he was just out to get my son. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's out there because he is trying to do something better and hope that that kid goes somewhere else and does something better. So we're getting some type of positive snowball somewhere in life. And Lord knows we need it right now. But all these guys that are out there, if you ask any of these high school coaches anywhere, if they've ever been after some kid or out to get some kids, no, they're there to help them because at the end of the day, their job is to win games. Now it's to make better young men or young ladies for sure. But they do have a performance evaluation that's
For
in
sure.
that win and loss column, and they got to make sure they can handle that. So I just think the parents have to understand how much of the time that goes into this, how much those guys are with your child. That even for me being around it forever, I never really took stock of it until my son got to high school and he did football and baseball of how much or how little time we actually saw it.
Yeah.
He was with those guys.
Yeah. Which I think, talk a little bit about then kind of what that looked like at that point. So with a high school or collegiate athlete, talk a little bit about how that sort of changed, the dynamic change. At that point, it shifts where you're getting to be with them, craft and mold a little bit more when they're younger. But
Right.
realistically, by the time they get to high school, they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Well, and I think the hardest part, we were prepared for it maybe a little bit different because I had played and I've done this for a long time, but it still was kind of, you know, it was kind of interesting to get to start seeing how little we saw him around the house while he was in season. I think the thing I was proudest of him was his junior year in football. He was on the varsity and they were practicing every morning. They had to be on the field at 5:45 or whatever, and he was getting himself up on his own, making his own breakfast, going there and doing, and this is for a kid that didn't play a whole lot, but he was that sold into being the best he could be for that team, and I don't think my wife and I have ever been any prouder from the athletic side of things than we were from that. But I also say I just had this conversation last night with a actually one of our customers, but is also somebody that I know their son is playing collegiate sports right now, and they were talking about somebody on the team that I guess a parent had decided to call a college coach with a complaint, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. It's completely different in those realms, but in the grand scheme of thing, I think just understanding that you're for the first time, and y'all are seeing this as well, is that they're they're living in a spot where they're being held accountable on their own by their teammates, by their coaches, by you. The adverse effect of that is that they're so bought in, we just don't see them as much around the house, and we have to pick and choose our spots where we're getting the opportunity to have that time.
I want you to talk about that. I'm going to dig in a little bit more on this one. And it's really around communication because, our rule in our house when Luke hit high school was we're no longer communicating for you. If you have an opportunity with your coach, if you want to schedule a lesson, if you want to go do XYZ, again, you're in the driver's seat of the bus.
Right.
And so the expectation is that, and a bit of that is because you know his personality.
Yes.
He's a very quiet kid. So it was like, as a parent, I have to teach you to go do this thing. And so, talk about what effective communication looks like and where's the line of when it belongs to the athlete to address the coach versus belonging to the parent.
This is probably one of the hottest topics of conversation right now with young players. So I've always had a rule that the first line of communication comes from the player. And if a parent's not okay with that, then that player probably doesn't need to be on our team. Now, I've never had an issue in the grand scheme of things with that. I've had parent conversations, had, more than I care to. But we simply make it a rule. And I think it has to be that black and white. Look, the rule, like what you're saying, is that everything with our team, the first line of communication is going to come from that player. Playing time, position, whatever it may be. They have to learn to do that because in reality, it is cliche, but it's real life when they're in the working world, you're not there, mom and dad. I'm sorry. And so they also have to be okay with going and speaking with an adult like an adult and not living in fear all the time of being around that coach or whatever. And I think that's also a big deal that a lot of these kids get into the spot where they're intimidated really for no reason around these coaches, and just being able to have conversations with them makes it to where that coach has the ability to coach them not in a hard, tough coaching way, but just speaking to them on a regular level, like we're talking right now, and explaining philosophy or a hitting technique or a fielding technique or whatever. And they should be put at ease in those situations, but they can't do it unless they start that way. And I think that is on the parents. Whether the coach has that rule or not, the parents should say, "Hey, look, when you get to this point, anything that you want with the coach, you need to go speak to them from that standpoint." And I don't think the parents really have any conversations. I get asked this all the time. When should I talk to the coach? When should I talk to the coach? And I'm like, you shouldn't. Unless you've got like a physical abuse situation, which I've never been around, and hopefully there shouldn't be a situation like that. You may not like the answer that coach gives. That's fact. You might not. Hey, you're not playing because, hey, this guy, Greg over here, he's better than you right now. But here's what you can do to push him and maybe have a shot. Those are things that are hard for a parent to hear, but the kids generally know. The
Yeah.
kids generally know. So
Well, and I think too, sometimes we aren't always accountable for our kids in that way. And I know we've talked about this, but we've had tough conversations with our kiddos where it's like, this kid's better. So if you want to go sharpen yourself, get in there,
yes,
get to work, like
yes,
go build relationships. And I think we do a disservice to our, because here's the reality in life. I mean, I work a job where I'm like, I'm good at what I do, but there's people who are better. And that's always going to be a reality of life. And so, how do we teach our kiddos? Like, I would love your thoughts and feedback on how we, as parents, supporting coaches, teach our kiddos accountability, teamwork, resilience. How do we continue to do that? Because I think what I see today is we're so only focused on our kiddos sometimes, or people can be, that again, it dismantles what you talked about at the beginning. It dismantles this relationships, team relationships, coach relationships, just understanding we're all people.
I've always just in the most basic aspect of this whole thing, you have to understand that your kids are going to work one day. I wish, you know, I wish they could all win the lottery or make some invention that makes them a bunch of money, but in reality, they're going to go to work. And I've coached, summer, fall baseball, got to coach at the college level for a year and a half. I've coached 27 or so years, give or take. So simple math says that's a bunch of players that I've coached over the years. And I've had five that I have coached that have gotten to play in the major leagues. That's five out of, you know, well over 1,000. That's a pretty small percentage. Now, the other side of that percentage is the ones that went to work. And so I think if we get into a spot as coaches or parents thinking that we're going to the big leagues, you've got to be honest with yourself about the numbers. You're probably not. But what are you going to do? You're going to go to work. So let's start understanding what's going to make us the best at work, that's going to make us to where we can be the most efficient, be a good team member for that. And all these things we're talking about, communicating with the head coach, that's communicating with the boss. Communicating with your teammates, that's communicating with the people that you're working with. I think doing work when nobody's looking as a player, you're hitting an extra bucket off the tee. All right. Well, that may be that extra 30 or 40 minutes that you spend at night, working on the computer to get something fixed so that you can be better for your whole team or for your coworkers. And so all those things are being taught. I think coaches need to do a really good job of making kids understand that within the realm of them working on whatever sport it is, they're learning the things that are going to be really important down the road. The parents need to back that up. And the parents need to understand this is again, this is black and white. I can say this in almost sincere, full certainty. I can't say 100% because we've been fortunate to have a couple that have gotten there, but your kid's not playing in the major leagues. Your kid's not playing in the NFL. Your kid's not playing in the NBA. If he gets there, that percentage is so small, great. But let's think about real life stuff. Now, he will go work for XYZ and be expected to perform. And, you should want to push them to be successful in those things, just like we do when they're out there, you know, hitting or pitching or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, and I could not agree with that more. I think one of the things I saw from growing up playing sports, and it's so funny because I think, I'm always really grateful for this. And I think about, I've been with HEB over a decade, and they've invested in me as a leader and done a lot of coaching. And honestly, a lot of where Span came from is I think about where I am today because of all the coaching that they invested in me as
Right.
a leader and professional. I'm better at my job. I'm a better leader. And my personality was a lot more like our oldest.
Got you.
It was very quiet. It was very introverted. I didn't have someone tell me the importance of relationships, the importance of communication. And so I think you're so right. Our goal with this is, gosh, can you imagine if these kiddos got these things poured into them at a young age that weren't just about
Well,
the
but
win or the collegiate or the whatever it is, but it's like about how do we build great humans right
we
now for
we need better. I mean, look, not telling you anything you don't know, but the world needs better humans right now. We know that above everything, but we also need people that are, and it's not just about college, which I think I'm a big believer in college, but I know it's not for everybody. The world needs electricians right now. They need plumbers right now. We need flooring installers for our company.
that's right.
We have all these trades that people have to understand. These kids can make a great living doing a bunch of this stuff. I work with these guys on a daily basis, and some didn't go to college, but they had somebody that was a mentor or somebody that took care of them and showed them how to do these trades and became what they've become. The plumber that I use for everything, he's self-taught and licensed and has made a great company and also works for a school district doing plumbing, is a supervisor of all their plumbers, but it's all because he went after a trade. And he was an athlete. He was an athlete here in our area in high school. We played football against each other. But he went that route and it's worked out really well. And more, but he had somebody pushing him not to go, hey, you're going to go play ball in college, but hey, you should look at this avenue and see if this could springboard you into something. And there's a lot of stories of that are out there. It's a I, but we have to, as a group, understand that success is defined in a lot of different ways, and not everybody. Like, look, me, I couldn't go be a plumber or electrician. I don't have the mindset for that stuff. Going through college and playing college athletics was something that I had a big importance of, or placed a lot of value with. My parents understood that. Both my brothers played college football. That was the way we were lined up in our house, and we had that focus. But others, if they were given the focus to go be the best, work in the oil field and be the best in that, okay, go do it and latch on to somebody that can give you the guidance, from a mentorship or whatever it is, to show them how to do it, and go work your tail off for a few years and figure it out. And that's, you know, it's a very big deal in this world. I wish we had more of them that were doing that on the trade side.
I love that, especially coming from a family where, my dad was a very successful entrepreneur. He didn't have a college education, made more money than a lot of people that do have a college education. But success looked like to him, he was so proud. I remember this growing up as a kid. We'd drive on roads that he paved across the state of Texas, and that was success for him. There was a
It's
lot of
awesome.
pride in that. And
Awesome.
so I think that it's great to kind of hear you say it really needs to be defined by the individual. And that goes back to our athletes. Success looks like them working towards a goal that's their goal, maybe not the parents' goal. So, what questions did I not ask that you wish you could share wisdom around?
I think you just touched on something that when I was reading through y'all's email this morning, success and the defining of that when it comes to these athletes. Unfortunately, right now, I think the vast majority are defined by their statistics and feel like their statistics as a player is what's defining them as a child to their parent. And I get that, because even though that was never enforced upon me, I felt that way in some regards, that everything about what I was doing as a player was defined in statistics that my parents would be happy about. They didn't care. They wanted us to work, be good teammates, find a way. If we're going to work hard, we're going to go all in on it and try to get to that next level, which, like I said, my brothers and I were able to do. But I think ultimately these kids, like if Luke goes out and goes 3 for 3 in a game this spring, does he come home and he's a better child because he went 3 for 3 versus 0 for 3? No. But how he could be better is how he responds to those two situations. We don't throw him a party for the 3 for 3 and tell him he's the greatest child to walk the face of the earth. And we also don't kick him right square in the butt when he comes home after an 0 for 3. We tell him, hey, you had one of those days, but we got to see what you're going to be like tomorrow when you come back, and maybe you do get that 2 for 3 or 3 for 3. I think that the statistical aspect of the way kids think they're being evaluated within their own home, it's unfortunate. It's kind of sad. It's something I work on with players quite a bit, is that, hey, your hit or not getting a hit does not define, whether you're a good person or a good teammate. What happens if you go up there and you just hit a line drive and you absolutely kill it and the shortstop catches it? Are you a bad teammate because you didn't get a hit? Now you almost knocked the shortstop over, but you didn't get a hit. So what do you think about that? And most of them look at me kind of cross-eyed the first time I ask them that, when I'm doing lessons and stuff like that. And I'm going, hey, you hit it really well. Give yourself a little bit of credit. You can be upset for a second just because you got out, so be it. But let's keep the positive moving forward. But if they hit 10 balls in a row hard, I don't throw them a parade. We just say, okay, we're getting better. But it is hard for a lot of parents, because what do we see? We see a Twitter or X whatever announcement, or Facebook announcement, or whatever, that XYZ player is hitting 450. Does that mean he's a great kid versus the kid that's batting 270? But that kid batting 270 is working his tail off. He's a great teammate. He's just not finding success all the time. Those are the tough parts that I think as parents we've got to keep in mind, that those kids cannot be stuck in a spot where they think their whole life revolves around their statistical performance on the field.
I love the wisdom of that. They're people first. And again, I think when I think of our sons, and my husband and I talk about this a lot, I'm like, I care most that they know Jesus. I care second most that they are good people who have a great work ethic, who are good teammates, who understand the importance of caring for other people. And then all that other stuff is just a little bit of noise, and we're going to support them for whatever their goals are. Unfortunately, you see that though. I do think there are times, we're at games with peers, and I'm like, man, I wouldn't want to go home with that kid.
Well, and that's the perfect thing, is that us as coaches, when I'm on the field in the game and I hear certain things or whatever, I'll just look over at the guys I'm coaching with from time to time, and we just shake our heads. We're like, number one, what just came out of your mouth to your child is completely incorrect. Let's just start with that. The timing of it's wrong, which makes it even worse. And now that kid's thinking something because you told them that, and now they're thinking about everything but what we need our team to be thinking or thinking about as a group right now. And I get it. Like you want to help in those regards, like we talked about earlier, but sometimes you will help the most by just being quiet or cheering for that whole entire team equally. And I'll tell you real fast a quick story. Years ago, I was coaching the summer ball program at Cy Falls High School. This was years before Cy Ranch even opened up. And we had a player that I first got when he was coming into his freshman year, like when I coached Luke the first time. And this kid was about 5'2", just the toughest little kid ever. And, instantly I could tell he was going to be good. But at the end of the day, he was also, I think he grew to be 5'5", maybe if he was standing on his tiptoes. To fully skip forward, he was a phenomenal high school player, even as a little guy. And I was able to get him connected with our head coach at Texas Tech. And even as a 5'5", 145-pound kid, he goes to Texas Tech. And not only that, he starts right out of the gate as a freshman, which is unheard of back then and even, still pretty tough to do today. But his parents were some of the greatest people that I've ever been around from a coach's perspective because they cheered for everyone. Like what I've always thought my wife does phenomenally. These people did it. So when they got to Tech, their son Joey started off playing, and the parents were sitting with another player's parents up in the stands for like the first couple weeks when they were able to make the trip to go see him play. Well, long story short, Joey starts struggling. He gets taken out of the lineup, and the other player, whose parents they were sitting with, is the one who replaced him in the field. Well, so they get to the game I think it's on a Saturday for a weekend series, and they get there, and that family is sitting somewhere else. They've been sitting together for 3 weeks, and finally, Bob, the dad, gets up and walks over to them and goes, "Hey, what are y'all doing? We've been sitting over here for 3 weeks." You have to know Bob, he's got this huge Boston accent. And so he's going, "What are y'all doing?" They're like, "Well, Jason took Joey's spot this weekend, so we didn't know if there's going to be a blah, blah." He goes, "Hey, Jason's playing great, and Joey has sucked for the last 2 weeks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cheer for Jason so that we can win ball games. And when Joey finds his way back in, then so be it. Now get over here and sit with us." And I've told that story for years because it defines everything that coaches would want to have. That's a parent that holds their own kid accountable. They were honest about their kid. They knew exactly, look, he wasn't playing well. It is what it is. And they also made a point to not only meet other parents, but cheer their tails off for that other player. And I think to this, and I know that those two boys are still close, and I just think it says volumes about the way that those things should happen in the stands and the way that we should approach it. And the biggest challenge in all this with athletics and youth has nothing to do with the youth. It 100% has to do with the parents at the end of the day deciding if they're going to be a pain in the what, or if they're going to go out there and support every player in the uniform and the coaches. And that's what creates the environment and the culture that usually wins a lot of games.
No, yeah, you couldn't have said it better. That's perfect. Well, anything else you would leave us with? Any other final words of wisdom? That was awesome.
No, I really appreciate you letting me, having me come on and do this. And I think the other thing that I think we actually may have even talked about is just understanding the big picture for your kids. We now my son's a sophomore, Texas Tech. He's actually technically a junior almost with his credits, and he's in their accounting program and kind of going through there. And what he's done up there, he's not playing college sports, but he's doing all the intramurals, he's coaching, he's umpiring softball games, he's doing all this stuff, and he's still around a bunch of stuff. My daughter's not playing volleyball anymore. She's heavily involved she's the president of the choir at Cy Ranch, and she's got a couple months left before she graduates. I think you have to understand again that your kids are going to find ways to be successful in other avenues. And, at the end of the day, they're probably going to be professionals in anything but professional sports. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner you can change your perspective of what I think is success with my kid. We didn't do everything right. We made mistakes. We still do. I mean, even as they get older into this level, you're still trying to work through it's just different challenges than it was when they were both in diapers. It's just a different scenario altogether. But right now we're understanding that, they're good kids. We didn't have this false premonition of playing Major League Baseball or whatever. We just wanted to be around it and enjoy it. And I think as parents, whether they play every game or they're just a guy in a uniform that plays every once in a while, cliches are cliches because they're correct, and it does go fast. And I know that's the oldest one in the book, but look around, look at your time where the kids in their uniform, and whether they have a great day or not, just go hug them. You know, tell them they played well. And like my my college coach would always leave every conversation with, don't be a jerk, be a good person. Merry Christmas. That was at the end of every single conversation that we had in college. So I think that's pretty simple advice.
Like, thank you for sharing that wisdom. And yeah, so much of just being there, supporting them, supporting what it is that they want to do and not projecting what it is that you want for them.
Bingo.
It's a big thing for us in our family is like, we care that you go and make disciples. And beyond that, we don't really care what else you do. Just do it to the best of your ability in everything that you do and work hard. So that's awesome. Great wisdom for our coaches, great wisdom, especially for our parents today, in how they support their athletes and in how they support the coaches who are supporting their athletes. So thank you again, Kurt. I really appreciate your time
Yeah,
today.
thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Wonderful to talk with you.
Stay tuned for future podcasts where we will bring on exciting guests in the sports world, highlight spotlight coaches, athletic directors, former and current collegiate and professional sports players, sports dietitians, psychologists, and more.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you.
Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels for more exclusive content on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X at @span_athletics.
Until next time, stay faithful, stay fueled, and remain focused on your goals.